Hello everyone, my name is Greg and I dev stuff. Welcome everyone to episode 6 of Stardew Valley-like game in Unity. In this episode we will implement drag and drop system in the inventory and drop out the items out of the inventory to the ground. Let's clean our root folder. This episode is brought to you by generous support of people on Patreon. If you want to join them, link to my Patreon in the description. I want to start this episode by clarifying and apologizing for my mistake in a previous episode. I said that scriptable objects can be used as a save system. This is not true. They will lose their persistency in the build game. So while you play in the editor, it will stay persistent. But the moment you build your application and run it, it will lose its persistency. Because scriptable objects are part of assets in your game, they will be packed and not save their state, aka they will not be persistent. We will have to implement some kind of save and load system later on. We need to create a drag and drop system in the inventory. Select Game Manager and create another new script called Item Drag and Drop Controller. This script will be used to store the reference to the currently created item for drag and drop system. If anyone knows a better name for this script, please let me know in the comments below. Open the newly created script. Inside we need to declare a slot for the currently selected item. The item we currently drag around. Initiate the item at the start. So let's expand our item slot with some new methods. First let's do copy. We want to have an ability to copy states of the item slot. And second method is clear. Well, it will clear out our slot. We will use it instead of equals null. Again, think about item slots as small slots. They will stay in the memory. You just fill them with the data you want to be stored in this slot. Open the custom editor for item container and call clear instead of directly assigning the new values. Now we want to be able to move items inside our inventory, so when you click on the item, it should be moved to the item drag and drop slot and removed from the inventory. And then you place the item somewhere else. Let's add our item drag and drop controller to the game manager. Good. Now when you open the inventory, you should be able to click on the item and pick it up into drag and drop controller. Let's serialize the item slot so we will be able to see what it has in it. Good. Open the inventory button. Unity has a handy interface for us called iPointer Click Handler, which will fire up every time you click on the UI object. Now when we press the button, we want to send the item slot associated with this button to the drag and drop. So it will either place item or pick it up. Go and create a new method called onClick on the item drag and drop controller. Pass item slot out of the inventory and open the newly created method. Good. Inside if drag and drop system slot is empty, copy the past item slot to the drag and drop slot, then clear the past item slot. So we picked up the item out of the past item slot in the inventory and put the item into our drag and drop item slot. If the item slot is not empty, we want to exchange items inside our item slots. Store the item and count of items from the inventory item slot. Then assign the currently being dragged item to the inventory item slot, and then set the stored item into the drag and drop item slot. And we will create a new method called set, which will set up the item in the item slot based on the parameters passed to the method. The difference with copy is that we will pass the item and the count instead of the already existing item slot. As you can see, if I press the sword, it does store it into the item drag and drop, but it doesn't update the inventory panel. We need to make the show method inside the inventory panel public, so we will be able to call it after we click on our inventory button. As you can see, we can drag and drop our items by clicking on them. We need to visualize the effect of dragging the item around. Create a small image which will be carrying the icon around. And then declare serialized item icon in the item drag and drop controller. Assign the icon to the game manager and hide the icon on the scene. Now in the item drag and drop controller, store the reference to the rect transform of the icon on the start. Then in the update check is the item icon is active in hierarchy. And in that assign mouse position to the item icon. Good. On the item icon turn off the raycast target, so it will not be clickable by mouse, so it will not obscure the mouse click detection for our UI. Now in the drag and drop controller assign the item icon to the drag item icon. Create new method called update icon, and inside check is there something in the drag and drop item slot. If there is something, activate icon object and place icon sprite of the object into the icon object. And if there is nothing, hide the icon. Good. Now we want to introduce the system which will allow us to drop the item out of our inventory. Maybe we want to throw away some junk. To do this, after we picked up the item, we need to detect does we click on the inventory or outside the inventory panel. In the update, check does our event system is pointer over game object equals false. In that case, it means we are not over any UI elements. Good. Now we need to introduce system which will spawn our dropped item. Go to the editor and create a new script called item spawn manager. Inside, let's define it as singleton. Then create a new public method called spawnItem, which will accept position, item, and count of items. Then inside we need to spawn pickup item prefab. So create a reference to the pickup item prefab and initiate object on the scene. Go to the editor. As you can see, we have a tree log as an item pickup, but there is an issue with this. Imagine having 100 items. So should you have a prefab for each pickup item? Imagine having to create 100 of those prefabs. So we need to change the implementation of item pickup. We want to make it generalized. The prefab will be just item pickup. And then inside the script we will assign the icon of what are you trying to pick up and, visual representation of the item on the scene. And the link to the exact item and the count of those items inside this small item pickup object on the scene. Open the script. Create a new method called set where you pass the item and count, and store them here. Then we want to replace rendered sprite on the sprite renderer to our item icon sprite. Now in the spawn item get pickup item and set it with our passed parameters. Go to the drag and drop controller and call spawn item when you click outside. But we need to convert our mouse position to the world position by using camera main screen to world point. One more thing before we test this. If we launch our game right now and try to throw away item, it might not show up on the screen. Reason is because when we convert the mouse position, the depth position is 0, which is the same with the camera. So it calls the object to spawn behind the camera viewport. So to fix this, simply nullify the position. Good. Clear the drag and drop item slot after you dropped the item. And set the item icon to false, to hide it. Last one touch. We need to change our tree to have an item so it will assign this item to pick up prefab when it is being cut. But we need to introduce a new variable. Drop count is the count of the drop objects on the screen. So when you cut the tree, 5 small tree logs will be spawned. But maybe you want that each of those logs give player 2 or even more tree logs than just 1. So for example you have 5 logs on the screen, but total wood resource yield will be 15. To do this, we will use the new variable, so each log will give 3 wood to the player. Actually move to the item spawn manager. Good, this is it for this episode. If you have any question or any ideas about code, please leave your comment below. If you are interested in seeing what will come out of this, please subscribe. If you want to support further, you can find my Patreon in the description. With best regards, see you in the next episode.